In a quiet forest on the edge of a small American town, night had fallen thick and heavy. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth. Stars glittered above, their light barely piercing through the dense canopy of trees. It was peaceful until the sudden streak of fire split the sky. A loud boom echoed through the woods as something large and metallic tore through the atmosphere, crashing deep into the heart of the forest. The impact shook the ground, startling animals and waking up nearby residents. Birds screeched and fled from their perches, while deer bolted in every direction. Smoke began to rise from the crash site, curling upward like ghostly fingers reaching for the stars. For a moment there was silence again, broken only by the crackling of flames licking at twisted metal shards scattered around the wreckage. Not far away, Emma Taylor sat on her porch, sipping a cup of tea. She had always loved the calmness of the countryside, but tonight felt different. Her dog, Max, growled softly, his ears pricked forward. Sensing something unusual, she stood up and squinted toward the woods. That's when she saw it, the glow. A fire flickering between the trees. Without hesitation, she grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the source, her heart pounding with a mix of curiosity and unease. As Emma approached the crash site, she noticed other people gathering too. Some were locals who had heard the explosion. Others seemed to have wandered out of sheer curiosity. Among them was Ryan Carter, a mechanic known for his love of tinkering with anything mechanical. He carried a toolbox slung over one shoulder. His brow furrowed as he studied the strange craft embedded in the ground. Its design was unlike anything anyone had ever seen: smooth curves, glowing panels, and symbols etched into its surface that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't just the ship, it was the figure standing beside it. A young girl, no older than 10, stumbled weakly near the wreckage. Her skin shimmered with a soft blue hue, and her wide, almond-shaped eyes reflected both fear and confusion. She wore tattered clothing that looked more like a uniform than anything. Human-made. Blood trickled down her arm, and she clutched what appeared to be a broken device close to her chest. For a moment, nobody moved. They simply stared, frozen in shock or disbelief. Then, chaos erupted. People started shouting questions, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of panic and suspicion. "What is that thing?" yelled a man named Greg, pointing at the girl. "It's not safe." Another woman shrieked, backing away quickly. "We don't know what it wants." Emma stepped forward, ignoring the murmurs around her. Something about the girl tugged at her heart. Despite the alien appearance, she looked so vulnerable, so human. Emma knelt down a few feet away, holding out her hand slowly to show she meant no harm. "It's okay," Emma said gently, though she doubted the girl understood English. "I'm here to help." The girl hesitated, her luminous eyes darting nervously between Emma and the growing crowd. Finally, she took a shaky step forward, collapsing into Emma's arms. Up close, Emma could see how frail she was, her body trembling with exhaustion and pain. She smelled faintly of ozone, and her skin was cold to the touch. Whatever this child was, she clearly needed medical care and fast. Ryan joined Emma, crouching beside her. "Do you think she's real?" he asked quietly, his voice tinged with awe. "She's hurt," Emma replied firmly, brushing aside his question. "Help me get her away from all these people before someone does something stupid." Reluctantly, Ryan nodded. Together, they helped the girl stand and guided her away from the crowd, which had grown louder and more agitated. Someone suggested calling the authorities, while another person muttered darkly about aliens being dangerous invaders. The tension was palpable, and Emma knew they didn't have much time. As they retreated deeper into the woods, the girl leaned heavily against Emma, her breathing shallow. Every now and then, she would glance back at the wreckage, her expression filled with sorrow. It was clear she had lost something or someone important in the crash. Once they were far enough away, Emma stopped to examine the girl's injuries. Using her scarf, she tied a makeshift bandage around the wound on her arm. The girl winced but didn't resist. Instead, she reached out tentatively, touching Emma's hand with her own. Her touch was surprisingly warm, despite her icy exterior. "Who are you?" Emma whispered, though she didn't expect an answer. To her surprise, the girl opened her mouth and spoke. Her words were soft and melodic, completely unintelligible, but there was a desperate urgency behind them. She pointed repeatedly toward the sky, her gestures frantic. "She's trying to tell us something," Ryan observed, watching intently. Emma nodded. "Maybe she's looking for help. Or maybe she's scared we'll hurt her." Ryan frowned, glancing back toward the crash site. The distant hum of engines could now be heard, signaling the arrival of vehicles. "If those people find us, we're in trouble. We need to keep moving." Emma agreed. Hoisting the girl carefully, she followed Ryan as they navigated through the dense forest, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the growing mob. As they walked, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far bigger and far more complicated than any of them could imagine. The next morning, news of the alien crash spread like wildfire through the small town. By sunrise, nearly everyone had heard about the mysterious girl with blue skin and glowing eyes. Rumors flew faster than facts, twisting the truth into something darker and more frightening. Some claimed she was a spy sent to scout Earth for invasion. Others whispered that her kind were dangerous predators, capable of wiping out entire civilizations. Fear gripped the community, turning neighbors against one another. Emma and Ryan, still hiding in the woods with the girl they now called Lyra, listened nervously as voices echoed nearby. Search parties had formed, armed with flashlights, rifles, and determination. They weren't just looking for answers. They wanted someone to blame. Emma tightened her grip on Lyra's hand, her mind racing. She knew they couldn't stay hidden forever, but venturing back into town seemed impossible. Lyra sat silently, her large eyes darting toward every sound. She didn't understand their language, but she could sense the hostility growing around them. Her body trembled, though whether from fear or exhaustion, Emma couldn't tell. Ryan, ever practical, tried to focus on solutions. He rummaged through his backpack, pulling out a granola bar and offering it to Lyra. She hesitated before taking it, nibbling cautiously. "It wasn't much, but it was something. We need to figure out what she needs," Ryan said under his breath. "Food, water, shelter, maybe even medicine," Emma nodded. "And we need to do it without getting caught. If anyone finds us—" "I know," Ryan interrupted, his tone grim. "We'll be lucky if they don't shoot first and ask questions later." As the day wore on, the search intensified. Helicopters buzzed overhead, their rotors chopping through the quiet of the forest. Dogs barked in the distance, their sharp noses sniffing for clues. Emma and Ryan moved deeper into the wilderness, staying low and avoiding open areas. Lyra struggled to keep up, her strength fading with each passing hour. At one point, she stumbled, falling to her knees. Emma knelt beside her, brushing dirt from her face. "It's okay," Emma murmured, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to reassure, Lyra or herself. "We'll get through this." But doubt gnawed at her. How long could they keep running? And where would they go when there was nowhere left to hide? Back in town, panic reached a fever pitch. A local preacher named Daniel Foster held an impromptu sermon outside the church, drawing a large crowd. His voice boomed over the square, filled with fiery rhetoric about sin and salvation. "This creature is not one of God's children," he declared, pointing dramatically toward the forest. "It is a test of trial sent to see if we will stand firm against evil." His words struck a chord with many, fueling their fear and mistrust. Even those who might have been sympathetic to Lyra's plight found themselves swayed by the preachers. Charisma. Among them was Jake Taylor, Emma's younger brother. He stood near the front of the crowd, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His face was pale, his jaw clenched. "She's your sister!" someone shouted, pointing accusingly at Jake. "How can you let her protect that thing?" Jake flinched but didn't back down. She made her choice, he snapped, his voice cracking. Slightly. I warned her not to get involved. Inside, he felt torn. He loved his sister, but he also feared what might happen if she continued down this path. Was she putting the entire town at risk? What if Lyra really was dangerous? The question swirled in his mind, leaving him unsure of whom to trust, including himself. Meanwhile, authorities arrived, setting up roadblocks and questioning witnesses. Sheriff Miller, a grizzled man with decades of experience, took charge of the investigation. He wasn't convinced Lyra posed a threat, but he couldn't ignore the mounting pressure from the townsfolk. "We need to find her," he told his deputies, "for everyone's sake." As night fell once again, Emma, Ryan, and Lyra found temporary refuge in an old hunting cabin tucked deep within the woods. The structure was dilapidated, its roof sagging and walls lined with cobwebs, but it offered some protection from the elements. Exhausted, they huddled together around a small fire, sharing what little food they had left. Lyra watched the flames dance, her expression unreadable. Occasionally, she would murmur something in her melodic language, gesturing toward the sky, or clutching the broken device she carried. Emma wished desperately that she could understand, but communication remained a barrier. All she could do was offer comfort, hoping it would be enough. Ryan worked tirelessly to repair the device, using tools from his bag and scraps salvaged from the wreckage. It was slow going, complicated by the unfamiliar technology. Still, he refused to give up. "If we can fix this," he explained to Emma, "maybe we can help her contact her people. Get her home." Emma nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. Even if they succeeded, what then? Would Lyra leave peacefully, or would her arrival bring consequences none of them could foresee? Hours passed, and the forest grew eerily silent. The absence of noise was almost worse than the chaos earlier. It felt like the calm before a storm. Emma kept watch, her flashlight scanning the shadows beyond the cabin. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig set her heart racing. She knew they were running out of time. Suddenly, headlights pierced the darkness, illuminating the trees just outside the clearing. Voices shouted orders, boots crunched against the ground. Someone had found them. Emma's stomach dropped. "There." "Here," she whispered, gripping Lyra's hand tightly. Ryan sprang into action, stuffing the half-repaired device into his bag. "We have to move now." Without hesitation, they bolted out the back door of the cabin, disappearing into the dense underbrush. Behind them, shouts grew louder as the search party closed in. Emma glanced back once, catching a glimpse of flashlights sweeping through the trees. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her legs burning with effort. Beside her, Lyra stumbled but pushed forward, driven by sheer willpower. For a moment, it seemed they might escape. But then, a gunshot rang out, echoing through the forest like a thunderclap. Everyone froze, including the pursuers. In the stunned silence that followed, Emma realized the situation had escalated far beyond anything she'd anticipated. This wasn't just a search anymore, it was a hunt. And they were the prey. Ryan grabbed Emma's arm, pulling her forward. "Keep moving," he urged, his voice barely audible. "Don't stop." Tears blurred Emma's vision as she ran, clutching Lyra's hand tighter than ever. She didn't know how much longer they could keep going, but giving up wasn't an option, not while Lyra still needed them. The forest seemed endless, a labyrinth of shadows and tangled roots that clawed at their feet with every step. Emma, Ryan, and Lyra pushed forward, their breaths coming in sharp gasps as they tried to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the search party. The gunshot had shattered any hope of reasoning with the townsfolk. It was clear now that fear had driven them to violence. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves felt like a threat, sending waves of panic through Emma's chest. Lyra stumbled again, her small frame struggling to keep pace. Her blue skin glistened faintly in the moonlight, but her movements were sluggish, her energy nearly spent. Emma slowed down, wrapping an arm around the girl's shoulders to steady her. "We can't stop," she whispered, though her own legs screamed for rest, just a little farther. Ryan led the way, his flashlight casting a narrow beam ahead of them. He scanned the ground carefully, looking for anything that might trip them up or give away their position. Behind them, the shouts of the search party echoed faintly, growing louder by the second. They were closing in. "We need somewhere to hide," Ryan said, glancing over his shoulder. His voice was calm, but there was an edge of desperation beneath it, somewhere they won't think to look. Emma nodded, scanning their surroundings. The dense trees offered some cover, but not enough to shield them completely. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted something, a narrow crevice between two massive boulders, partially hidden by thick vines. It wasn't much, but it might be enough. "Over here," she hissed, guiding Lyra toward the opening. Ryan followed, crouching low as he helped them squeeze into the tight space. Inside, the air was cool and damp, and the walls pressed close on all sides. It was cramped and uncomfortable, but it would have to do. For several tense minutes, they sat in silence, listening as the search party passed nearby. Boots crunched against leaves, flashlights swept across the trees, and voices called out angrily. Emma held Lyra close, feeling the girl's shallow breathing against her side. Ryan kept his hand on a wrench tucked into his belt, ready to defend them if necessary. But the searchers moved on without discovering their hiding spot when the noise finally faded. Emma let out a shaky breath. "That was too close," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan nodded, rubbing a hand over his face. "We can't stay here forever. They'll find us eventually." Emma knew he was right. Their options were dwindling, and Lyra's condition was worsening. She needed proper care, something they couldn't provide while running for their lives. Emma glanced at the girl, who leaned heavily against her, her glowing eyes half closed. There had to be another way. Later that night, after regrouping and moving to a safer location, Ryan pulled out the broken device he'd been working on. It was still incomplete, its surface etched with alien symbols that pulsed faintly when touched. He set it on the ground and examined it closely, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I think I'm getting closer," he said, adjusting a tiny circuit inside the device. "If I can fix this, maybe we can use it to call for help, or at least figure out what she's trying to tell us." Emma watched him work, her arms wrapped protectively around Lyra. "Do you really think it will work?" "It has to," Ryan replied, his tone firm despite the uncertainty in his eyes. "We don't have any other options." Lyra stirred slightly, reaching out to touch the device with trembling fingers. She spoke softly in her melodic language, her voice filled with urgency. Though Emma and Ryan couldn't understand her words, the meaning was clear. This device was important. It was her only link to HomeDot. As Ryan continued tinkering, Emma found herself thinking about the people back in town, their fear, their anger, their refusal to see beyond their own prejudices. She thought about her brother Jake and how he had looked at her with disappointment and betrayal. It hurt, knowing that even family could turn against her so quickly. But she also thought about Lyra, who had done nothing wrong except crash land in the wrong place at the wrong time. How could anyone look at her and see a monster? "They're scared," Emma said suddenly, breaking the silence. "That's why they're acting this way. Fear makes people do terrible things." Ryan glanced up from his work. "Yeah, but that doesn't make it okay. We're better than this. Humanity is better than this." Emma wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered in her mind. Were they truly better? Or were they just as capable of cruelty as anyone else? By dawn, Ryan had made significant progress on the device. When he powered it on, a soft hum filled the air, and a series of lights blinked rapidly across its surface. Lyra's eyes widened, and she reached for it eagerly, her fingers brushing against the glowing symbols. For the first time since the crash, a flicker of hope appeared on her face. "She recognizes it," Emma said, smiling faintly. "It must be working." Ryan nodded, relief washing over him. "Now we just need to figure out how to use it." Before they could celebrate, however, a new sound interrupted their moment, a distant rumble that grew louder with each passing second. They looked up to see a helicopter sweeping over the treetops, its spotlight cutting through the morning. Mist, panic surged through Emma as she realized they'd been spotted. "They found us!" she cried, pulling Lyra to her feet. Ryan grabbed the device and stuffed it into his bag. "Run!" They bolted through the forest, dodging trees and leaping over roots as the helicopter circled overhead. Its rotors roared deafeningly, drowning out all other sounds. Suddenly, a crackling voice came through a loudspeaker. "Stop where you are! You are surrounded!" Emma's heart sank. They weren't just dealing with locals anymore. The military had joined the hunt. This changed everything. Ryan glanced at Emma, his expression grim. "We're not going to outrun them." "We need a plan." Emma hesitated, her mind racing. Then, an idea struck her one last gamble. "Distract them," she said urgently. "Lead them away from Lyra. I'll take her and try to get her to safety." Ryan stared at her, shocked. "Are you crazy? They'll arrest you or worse." "It's the only way," Emma insisted, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "You can move faster without us. Buy us some time." Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but the resolve in Emma's eyes stopped him. He nodded reluctantly. "Be careful." With that, Ryan veered off in the opposite direction, shouting and waving his arms to draw attention to himself. The helicopter immediately turned to follow him, its spotlight illuminating his path. Emma didn't waste a second. Clutching Lyra's hand tightly, she sprinted in the opposite direction, praying they wouldn't be seen. For several agonizing minutes, they ran blindly, guided only by instinct and adrenaline. Finally, they reached a secluded clearing surrounded by tall trees. Exhausted, Emma collapsed to her knees, pulling Lyra down with her. They were safe for now, but as Emma caught her breath, she couldn't shake the image of Ryan disappearing into the woods, sacrificing himself for their sake. Tears welled in her eyes, but she forced them back. There would be time to mourn later. Right now, she had to focus on keeping Lyra alive and finding a way to get her home. Above them, the sky began. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Emma sat with Lyra in the clearing, her body aching from the relentless chase. The girl leaned against her, her breathing shallow but steady. Though she couldn't understand English, Lyra seemed to sense Emma's exhaustion and offered a small, grateful smile. It was a fleeting moment of calm amidst the chaos, but Emma knew it wouldn't last. They were still in danger, and Ryan's absence weighed heavily on her mind. Emma tried not to think about him too much. She replayed his words in her head, his determination to protect them, even if it meant putting himself at risk. "He'll be okay," she whispered to herself, though deep down, she wasn't sure. The thought of losing him gnawed at her, but she pushed it aside. Right now, Lyra needed her full attention. As the hours passed, Emma focused on keeping Lyra comfortable. She used a clean cloth from her bag to wipe away dirt and sweat from the girl's face. Lyra flinched slightly at first, unused to human touch, but soon relaxed under Emma's gentle care. Occasionally, Lyra would murmur something in her melodic language, pointing toward the sky or clutching the broken device that Ryan had repaired. Emma wished desperately that she could understand what Lyra was trying to say, but their communication remained limited to gestures and expressions. By midday, hunger and thirst began to take their toll. Emma rummaged through her backpack, finding only a bottle of water and a few crackers left. She shared them with Lyra, who ate slowly, savoring each bite. Despite her alien appearance, there was something undeniably human about her vulnerability. Emma couldn't help but feel a growing bond with the girl, one that transcended language and species. Meanwhile, Ryan darted through the woods, his movements quick and deliberate. He had managed to lead the helicopter away from Emma and Lyra, but he knew it was only a matter of time before they caught up to him. His lungs burned and his legs felt like lead, but he refused to stop. Every step he took gave Emma and Lyra a better chance of survival. Finally, he reached a rocky outcrop overlooking a narrow ravine. It was a risky spot, but it offered some cover. Crouching behind a boulder, Ryan caught his breath and listened for signs of pursuit. The sound of footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the distant hum of the helicopter circling above. He tightened his grip on the wrench in his hand, ready to defend himself if necessary. Suddenly, a voice crackled over. "Megaphone, come out with your hands up. You're surrounded." Ryan clenched his jaw. He had hoped to lose them, but the soldiers were persistent. Peering cautiously over the edge of the ravine, he spotted several figures moving through the trees below. They were closing in fast. Thinking quickly, Ryan grabbed a loose rock and hurled it into the bush on the opposite side of the clearing. The noise drew the soldier's attention, giving him a precious few seconds to slip away. He moved silently, weaving through the trees until he found another hiding spot. But no matter how far he ran, the voices followed, relentless and unyielding. Back. In the clearing, Emma heard the distant shouts and realized Ryan's plan was working for now. She felt a pang of guilt knowing he was risking everything for them, but she also felt a surge of gratitude. If anyone could hold their own against the soldiers, it was Ryan. As the afternoon wore on, Emma noticed Lyra becoming more alert. Her eyes scanned the sky repeatedly, as if searching for something. Finally, she pointed upward and spoke urgently, her tone filled with excitement. Emma looked up but saw nothing except clouds drifting lazily across the horizon. "What is it?" Emma asked softly, though she knew Lyra couldn't understand her. "Are you trying to tell me something?" Lyra nodded vigorously, repeating her gesture toward the sky. Then she reached into Ryan's bag and pulled out the repaired device. Pressing a glowing button, she activated it, and a soft hum filled the air. A beam of light shot upward, piercing through the canopy of trees and disappearing into the atmosphere. Emma stared in awe. "You're calling for help," she said, realization dawning on her. "You're trying to contact your people." Lyra smiled weakly, her eyes shining with hope. For the first time since the crash, Emma allowed herself to believe they might actually succeed. But her relief was short-lived. Moments later, the ground trembled slightly, and the unmistakable roar of engines echoed through the forest. The helicopter had returned. Emma grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her to her feet. "We have to go," she urged, glancing nervously at the device. "They'll be here any second." But Lyra resisted, shaking her head firmly. She clutched the device tightly, refusing to let go. Emma understood. This was her only chance to reconnect with her kind. Leaving it behind wasn't an option. "Okay," Emma relented, gripping Lyra's arm. "We'll take it with us." Together, they sprinted deeper into the woods, the helicopter's spotlight cutting through the trees behind them. Branches whipped at their faces, and roots threatened to trip them at every turn, but they didn't stop. Ahead, Emma spotted a narrow stream cutting through the forest. If they could cross it, they might throw off their pursuers. Reaching the water's edge, Emma hesitated for a split second before plunging in, pulling Lyra along with her. The cold shock of the stream sent shivers through her body, but she pressed on, wading through the knee-deep current. On the other side, they scrambled up the bank and collapsed onto the damp earth, gasping for air. For a moment, they lay there, listening as the helicopter circled overhead. But instead of following them across the stream, it veered off in another direction. Emma breathed a sigh of relief, though she knew they weren't safe yet. The soldiers would regroup and come after them again. As night fell, Emma and Lyra huddled together beneath a cluster of trees, hidden from view. The device emitted a faint glow, its hum steady and reassuring. Lyra held it close, her expression a mix of hope and apprehension. Emma wrapped an arm around her, offering what little comfort she could. "We'll get through this," Emma murmured, though she wasn't sure whom she was trying to convince. "Just hold on a little longer." Above them the stars twinkled brightly, scattered across the vast expanse of the night sky. Somewhere out there, Lyra's people might be watching, waiting to answer her call. Emma gazed upward, wondering if they'd arrive in time, or if humanity's fear and mistrust would destroy their chance at redemption. Her thoughts drifted back to Ryan, alone somewhere in the forest, facing dangers she couldn't imagine. She prayed he was safe, that his sacrifice hadn't been in vain. No matter what happened next, she vowed to honor his bravery by seeing this through to protect Lyra and prove that not all humans were consumed by fear. The forest fell silent once more, the world holding its breath. In the darkness, Emma tightened her grip on Lyra, determined to keep fighting for her, for Ryan, and for the fragile thread of hope that still connected them to the stars. The night was cold and quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against Emma's ears like a heavy blanket. She sat with Lyra beneath the trees, their backs pressed against the rough bark of an ancient oak. The device in Lyra's hands continued to hum softly, its glow pulsing rhythmically, as if alive. Emma watched it closely, wondering if it was working, if anyone out there was listening. But for now, all they could do was wait. Lyra seemed calmer than before, her wide eyes fixed on the stars above. Occasionally, she would murmur something in her melodic language, pointing toward the sky. Emma wished she could understand, but the girl's gestures were enough to convey her meaning. She was waiting for a sign, hoping her people would come. Emma felt a pang of guilt knowing how much Lyra had endured since the crash alone, injured and surrounded by fear. Yet despite everything, the girl remained hopeful. That resilience gave Emma strength. As the hours passed, exhaustion began to take its toll. Emma's body ached from running, her muscles stiff and sore. Her mind raced with thoughts of Ryan, the soldiers, and what might happen next. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl made her jump. Her nerves stretched thin. Still, she forced herself to stay alert, scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. Sometime after midnight, a low rumble echoed through the forest. At first, Emma thought it was thunder, but the noise grew louder, deeper, until the ground beneath them trembled slightly. Lyra straightened, her glowing eyes widening in excitement. She clutched the device tightly, her breath quickening. Emma followed her gaze upward, squinting into the star-filled sky. Then she saw a faint light descending from the heavens, growing brighter with each passing second. It wasn't the harsh glare of a helicopter or the flicker of lightning. This was something else entirely. The light moved gracefully, almost silently, as if gliding through the air. Emma's heart pounded as she realized what it might be. "Is that your ship?" she whispered, turning to Lyra. Lyra nodded eagerly, tears glistening in her luminous eyes. She spoke quickly, her voice filled with emotion, though Emma couldn't understand the words. The message was clear. Help was finally here. Emma stood up, pulling Lyra to her feet. They stepped into the open, away from the cover of the trees. Just as the light touched down in a nearby clearing, a sleek silver craft emerged from the glow, its surface smooth and reflective like liquid metal. It hovered a few feet above the ground, emitting a soft hum that resonated with the device in Lyra's hands. For a moment, Emma simply stared, overwhelmed by the sight. This was real proof that life existed beyond Earth, but there was no time to marvel. The soldiers wouldn't be far behind, and she knew they couldn't let fear or ignorance ruin this moment. She turned to Lyra, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're going home," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "You'll be safe now." Lyra looked at her, her expression filled with gratitude. She reached out, touching Emma's cheek with her cool fingertips. Then, without warning, she embraced her tightly, holding on as if afraid to let go. Emma returned the hug, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, despite their differences, they were connected not by blood or species, but by trust and compassion. When Lyra finally pulled away, she hesitated, glancing back at the ship. Emma nodded encouragingly. "Go," she urged. "They're waiting for you." Lyra took a step forward, then stopped again. Reaching into the folds of her tattered clothing, she pulled out a small crystal-like object and pressed it into Emma's hand. It shimmered faintly, catching the moonlight. Though Emma didn't understand its purpose, she knew it was important, a token of friendship. Perhaps, or a promise of hope. Before she could say anything more, the ship's door slid open, revealing a figure bathed in soft light. It was taller than Lyra, with the same shimmering blue skin and large, expressive eyes. The being stepped forward, speaking in the same melodic language. Lyra responded eagerly, gesturing toward Emma and the forest behind them. Emma watched as the two exchanged words, feeling both relief and sadness. She had done what she set out to do. She had protected Lyra and helped her reunite with her kind. But saying goodbye wasn't easy. As Lyra boarded the ship, she turned one last time, waving goodbye. Emma waved back, forcing a smile even as tears blurred her vision. The door closed with a soft hiss, and the ship began to rise, its glow intensifying. Within moments, it shot upward, disappearing into the night sky. Emma stood there, staring after it, until the light faded completely. The forest fell silent once more, as if holding its breath. It wasn't long before the soldiers arrived, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Emma heard their voices shouting orders, their boots crunching against the leaves. She didn't run this time. There was no point. Lyra was safe, and that was all that mattered. When they found her, she raised her hand slowly, showing she meant no harm. One of the soldiers approached cautiously, his rifle trained on her. "Where is it?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "She's gone," Emma replied calmly. "Her people came for her." The soldier frowned, clearly skeptical. "What are you talking about?" Emma held up the crystal Lyra had given her, letting the light catch its shimmering surface. "This is proof," she said simply. "She wasn't our enemy. She needed help, and we gave it to her." The soldier lowered his weapon, slightly, studying her face. Behind him, others murmured among themselves, unsure of what to make of her story. For a moment, Emma thought they might arrest her anyway, but then the leader of the group stepped forward. It was Sheriff Miller, his expression unreadable. "Come with us," he said gruffly. "We'll sort this out back at the station." Emma nodded, following without resistance. She knew there would be questions, maybe even consequences, but she didn't care. She had done the right thing for Lyra, for Ryan, and for herself. Back in town, news of the alien encounter spread quickly, sparking debate and division. Some praised Emma for her bravery, while others accused her of risking humanity's safety. Jake refused to speak to her, his anger still raw, but Emma didn't let it bother her. She carried the crystal with her everywhere, a reminder of the bond she had formed with someone so different, yet so alike. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such an extraordinary event. Emma often found herself gazing at the stars, wondering if Lyra ever looked back. She hoped the girl was happy, safe among her own kind. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sunset, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of her yard. It was Ryan, battered but alive. His clothes were torn, and his face bore scratches. But he was smiling. "I told you I'd be okay," he said. Walking toward her, Emma jumped to her feet, tears streaming down her cheeks as she threw her arms around him. "I thought I'd lost you," she admitted, her voice breaking. Ryan hugged her tightly. "Never," he promised. "Not while there's still work to do." Together, they stood under the fading light of the sun, two ordinary humans who had faced the extraordinary. They didn't know what the future held, but they knew one thing for certain. Sometimes, even in the face of fear and uncertainty, kindness could bridge the widest gaps between worlds, between hearts, and between strangers. The days that followed were a blur of questions, accusations, and uneasy stares. Emma found herself sitting in the sheriff's office more times than she could count, answering the same inquiries over and over again. The soldiers who had accompanied. Sheriff Miller wanted details, how Lyra had looked, what she had said, how the ship had appeared, but Emma kept her answers simple. She described the events as plainly as possible, focusing on the facts rather than emotions. Still, suspicion lingered in their eyes, as if they doubted her story or feared she might be hiding something. Ryan stayed by her side whenever he could, his presence a steady source of support. Though battered and bruised from his encounter with the soldiers, he refused to let Emma face the scrutiny alone. Together, they recounted their journey through the forest, carefully omitting any mention of the crystal Lyra had given Emma. It felt too personal, too sacred, to share with anyone else. Outside the station, the town buzzed with rumors. Some people claimed the alien girl had been a threat all along, while others believed Emma and Ryan had acted heroically. A few even suggested that humanity should prepare for an invasion, citing Lyra's arrival as proof that Earth wasn't alone in the universe. Daniel Foster, the preacher, continued to fan the flames of fear during his sermons, warning congregants about the dangers of trusting outsiders, even those from beyond the stars. Jake avoided Emma entirely, refusing to answer her calls or acknowledge her when they crossed paths. His silence hurt more than any argument ever could. Emma understood his anger. He had always been protective of her, but it didn't make the distance between them any easier to bear. She missed her brother, missed the closeness they once shared. Yet she couldn't bring herself to regret her actions. Protecting Lyra had been the right thing to do, no matter the cost. As the weeks passed, life in the small town began to settle into a fragile kind of normalcy. The military withdrew, leaving behind only a few agents to monitor the area for further activity. Reporters came and went, eager to capture interviews and snap photos of the carnivorous humans who had dared to help an alien. The nickname stuck, much to Emma's frustration. She hated the way it twisted their intentions, painting them as reckless or dangerous when all they had done was show compassion. Despite the attention, Emma tried to focus on healing. Her body ached from the strain of running and hiding, but it was her mind that needed the most care. Nights were restless, filled with dreams of glowing ships and shimmering blue skin. Sometimes she woke up reaching for Lyra, only to remember that the girl was gone. Each morning brought a mix of relief and longing, gratitude and grief. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sunset, Ryan joined her. He carried 2 cups of coffee, handing one to her before settling into the chair beside hers. For a while, neither of them spoke, content to sit in companionable silence. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and damp earth, a reminder of the forest where everything had changed. "You okay?" Ryan finally asked, breaking the quiet. Emma shrugged, sipping her coffee. "I don't know," she admitted. "Some days I feel like I did the right thing. Other days, I wonder if it mattered." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "It mattered," he said firmly. "You gave her a chance. You showed her kindness when no one else would. But at what cost?" Emma countered, her voice tinged with sadness. "My brother won't talk to me. Half the town thinks we're criminals. And Lyra, she's gone. What if none of this changes anything?" Ryan set his cup down, turning to face her. "Maybe it doesn't," he admitted. "But maybe it does. People are scared, sure, but they're also talking. They're thinking about things they never thought about before. That has to count for something." Emma sighed, leaning back in her chair. She knew he was right, but it was hard to see the bigger picture when the immediate consequences loomed so large. Still, she appreciated his optimism. It reminded her why she had trusted him in the first place. A few days later, Emma received an unexpected visitor. It was Sheriff Miller, standing awkwardly on her doorstep with a folder tucked under his arm. His expression was unreadable, a mix of curiosity and discomfort. "Can I come in?" he asked, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Emma hesitated before stepping aside, gesturing for him to enter. They sat at the kitchen table, the folder resting between them like an unspoken question. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I've been reviewing your statements," Miller began, his tone cautious. "And I've got to say, I don't think you're lying." Emma raised an eyebrow, surprised by his candor. "But?" Miller leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. There's pressure coming from higher up. People want answers, explanations. They're not happy about what happened out there. I told you everything I know, Emma replied evenly. Lyra wasn't a threat. She was lost and scared, just like anyone else would be. I believe you, Miller said quickly. But belief isn't enough. There are rules, protocols, things I can't control. Emma frowned, sensing what he was leading up to. What happens now? Miller hesitated, glancing at the folder. They're considering charges, obstruction, harboring. Maybe worse. I don't agree with it, but my hands are tied. Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had expected trouble, but hearing it confirmed made it real in a way she hadn't anticipated. Beside her, Ryan stiffened, his jaw clenched. Isn't there anything you can do? He asked. His voice sharp. Miller shook his head. Not officially, but unofficially. He slid the folder toward Emma. Take a look at this. Inside were documents detailing reports of strange phenomena across the country, lights in the plea. Sky mysterious disappearances, encounters with unidentified beings. Some dated back decades, others were recent. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note. Keep looking up. Emma glanced at Miller, confusion written across her face. What is this? A reminder, he said simply, that you're not alone. Whatever you decide to do next, you've got allies. People willing to listen. Emma stared at the papers, her heart pounding. She didn't fully understand what Miller was offering, but she recognized the gesture for what it was, a lifeline. Someone, somewhere, still believed in the possibility of understanding rather than fear. That night, Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The crystal Lyra had given her rested on her bedside table, its faint glow casting soft shadows across the room. She thought about everything that had happened, the crash, the chase, the sacrifices, and wondered if it had truly made a difference. Maybe it would take years, decades even, for humanity to learn how to coexist with beings from beyond the stars. Or maybe it wouldn't happen at all. But then she remembered Ryan's words, people are talking, and Miller's note, keep looking up. Small sparks perhaps, but sparks nonetheless. Enough to light a fire, given time. Emma reached for the crystal, holding it gently in her palm. Its warmth was comforting, a reminder of the bond she had formed with someone so different, yet so alike. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't stop fighting for understanding, for connection, for hope. Above her, the stars twinkled brightly, scattered across the vast expanse of the night sky. Somewhere out there, Lyra was safe among her own kind. And here on Earth, Emma vowed to keep looking up for answers, for allies, for a future where kindness could bridge the widest gaps. She closed her eyes, letting sleep claim her. For the first time in weeks, her dreams weren't filled with fear or doubt. Instead, they carried the promise of possibility, a brighter tomorrow waiting just beyond the horizon. Months passed, and the town slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The initial frenzy over Lyra's arrival had faded, replaced by a quiet unease that lingered like a shadow. People went about their daily lives, but the memory of the alien girl and the two humans who had helped her remained fresh in everyone's minds. Emma and Ryan became reluctant symbols, their actions debated in whispers at grocery stores, churches, and coffee shops. Some saw them as heroes. Others dismissed them as reckless troublemakers. But no matter what people said, Emma and Ryan carried on, determined to move forward. Emma kept the crystal Lyra had given her close, often holding it when she needed comfort. It sat on her bedside table, glowing faintly in the dark, a constant reminder of the bond she had formed with someone so different yet so alike. She still thought about Lyra every day, wondering if the girl was safe, happy, reunited with her family. Sometimes late at night, she would step outside and gaze up at the stars, imagining Lyra doing the same somewhere far away. Ryan stayed by Emma's side, his friendship unwavering. Together, they faced the challenges that came their way, interviews with government officials, skeptical neighbors, and the occasional reporter looking for a sensational story. They didn't always agree on how to handle things, but their shared experience had forged a connection neither could ignore. Over time, Ryan began opening up more, sharing his dreams of exploring the unknown. His fascination with science fiction, now tinged with the reality of having touched something truly otherworldly. One crisp autumn evening, Emma found herself sitting on her porch, wrapped in a blanket as golden leaves swirled around her feet. The air smelled of wood smoke and earth, and the sky above was painted in streaks of orange and pink. It was peaceful, a rare moment of calm after months of chaos. Ryan joined her, carrying 2 mugs of hot cider. "You've been quiet lately?" he said, handing her a mug. "Everything okay?" Emma nodded, sipping the warm drink. "I'm just thinking." "About Lyra?" Ryan guessed, his tone gentle. "Yeah," Emma admitted. "And everything else. What happens next, you know? Are we supposed to go back to normal after all this?" Ryan shrugged. "Normal's overrated. Maybe we're supposed to keep pushing, keep asking questions." Emma smiled faintly. "You sound like one of those conspiracy theorists." "Maybe I am," Ryan joked. "But seriously, we can't let fear win. If we do, then none of this mattered." Before Emma could respond, a low hum filled the air, soft and steady, like the distant thrum of machinery. Both of them froze, their eyes widening as they turned toward the sound. At first, it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, blending with the rustle of leaves and the chirping of crickets. Then, without warning, a bright light illuminated the yard, casting long shadows across the ground. Emma shielded her eyes, squinting into the brilliance. Hovering above the trees was a sleek silver craft, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. It looked identical to the ship that had taken Lyra home, but smaller, more intimate. A hatch opened silently, and a figure stepped out, bathed in soft light. It was Lyra. She hadn't changed much since the last time Emma had seen her, though her injuries were healed and her uniform gleamed as if newly made. Her large, luminous eyes scanned the area before landing on Emma and Ryan. Without hesitation, she ran toward them, her movements graceful and fluid. Emma stood up, tears streaming down her face as Lyra embraced her tightly. For a moment, words weren't necessary. The hug said everything: gratitude, joy, relief. When they finally pulled apart, Lyra turned to Ryan, offering him the same warmth. He chuckled nervously, clearly unsure how to react, but his smile said, "It all. I wasn't sure you'd come back," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Lyra tilted her head, studying Emma's face. Though she still couldn't speak English, her meaning was clear. She hadn't forgotten. She reached into a pouch at her side and pulled out another crystal, similar to the one she had given Emma before. This one was larger, its glow brighter, pulsing with energy. "She wants us to have it," Ryan guessed, watching Lyra carefully place the crystal in Emma's hands. Emma held it reverently, feeling its warmth spread through her fingers. "What does it mean?" she asked, looking at Lyra. Lyra gestured toward the sky, then pointed at the crystal. Her message was simple, but profound. This was a gift, a symbol of trust and hope. It was also a promise, a way for Emma and Ryan to stay connected. Even across unimaginable distances. Behind Lyra, the ship hovered patiently, its hum growing louder. Emma realized their time together was limited. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to smile. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything," Lyra nodded, her expression softening. She reached out, touching Emma's cheek one last time, before turning back toward the ship. As she stepped inside, the hatch closed smoothly, sealing her within. The craft rose silently into the air, its light growing brighter until it disappeared into the night sky. Back on the porch, Emma and Ryan sat in stunned silence, the crystal resting between them. Neither spoke for a long time, each lost in their thoughts. Finally, Ryan broke the quiet. "Well," he said, his tone light despite the weight of the moment, "that was something." Emma laughed softly, wiping tears from her cheeks. Yeah, something incredible. They sat there for a while longer, staring at the stars. The world felt different now, not because of Lyra's brief return, but because of what it represented. Emma realized that humanity's journey wasn't just about discovery or survival. It was about connection, about finding ways to bridge the gaps between fear and understanding, strangers and friends. The crystal pulsed gently in her hands, a beacon of hope. Somewhere out there, Lyra was watching the same stars, carrying the same memories. And here on Earth, Emma vowed to honor that connection, to keep looking up, to keep believing in the possibility of a better future. As the night deepened, the forest fell silent once more, but this time the quiet felt less lonely. It was a reminder that even in the vastness of the universe, kindness could create bonds stronger than fear. And sometimes those bonds were enough to change the world, or at least the hearts of those willing to listen.